it's always been by darker skinned people that I feel tear me down. I've never thought about it. I've never correlated it to skin color because it's just never played an aspect in my mind. It's always been about uh, poverty for me. It's always been like, oh, poverty shit's getting me down. But I've never actually thought to myself, yeah, it's a dark. This person is darker than me. I've never actually ever looked at it. I remember I had this American girlfriend, early years of being in England. She was American, and she was the first one that introduced me to topics of race, and she was much darker than I was. And she was the one who, I mean, I used to say things like, I don't see color. Can you believe that? I used to say that. And she cussed me. She was like, you can't say that. Da 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 da. And I didn't understand. I just didn't get it. And she's breaking it down to me that I'm light skinned, I got privilege. And I'm like, what? I didn't feel privileged.
Yeah.
I'm transitioning. I was homeless.
Mm.
Like, what privilege are you? And when I was homeless, best believe I could not find anywhere to stay. But again, what did that have to do with? I think that was ageism
Mm.
because I was young. I was telling them I was a guy. I had no kids, and I was healthy. So I think that is how I was looking at it. I never once went, oh, it's because I'm black. Never.
Mm.
And I do hear more darker skinned people go, oh, it's because I'm black. But then again, I think something you're raising is that the importance of having that diverse voice because it means we can have those conversations that go, actually, is it an internal hate? Is it that you see me, assume I have some privilege, and then you put that hate
Mm.
towards me, and you're like treating me a certain way because you think, oh, light skin, pretty
Mm.
boy, whatever they say. But then I'm just looking
Yeah.
at you like my brother. I'm like, you're my kin, you know?
Mm.
You're my kin, and that's it.
There's so much to it though. It's interesting you say like it was an American girlfriend because look at the culture there and the history there. When you was talking about you haven't really thought about race much, and I'm thinking when you came from somewhere that was like predominantly black,
Yeah,
different shades, but all one, you know.
one
So for
people.
me, I'm thinking well, it's been opposite here. When you see somebody who looks like you on TV, you stop. You're like, wow,
True.
it's not, it's not. You're used to being a minority. Well, for me, I can say I'm used to being a minority here. So for me, I became very aware of race quite early. Um,
Even that word minority, I just my skin crawls when I hear it. That the BM, the BAME,
oh
I
really?
must.
Okay.
It's like it's okay. Answer me this: is it black and Asian? Or is it black Asian
I don't know.
minority ethnics, or is it black Asian and minority ethnics?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Do you call yourself a BAME?
I call myself black.
Whatever, but have you gone out and you just said that I'm a minority and you've said it quite a few times as well. So have you taken on that word before?
Yeah.
All
I
right,
mean,
why?
because I give you an example. Like on my course, I feel it. I'm the only black man in that room.
But that don't mean we're the minority.
But
That just means we're the only
what
black
else would you
person
call
in the
it?
room.
Yeah, but how else would you describe it?
I'm
Like I
the only
feel
black
like.
person in the room. Say you have 10 people lined up, yeah?
Mhm.
One of them is, let's say, okay, argument say black.
Mhm.
One's a black person, and
Mhm.
you're walking into that room and you see this black shy boy in the corner.
Mhm.
And you go over to the boy in the corner and you go, oh, what's wrong? And the boy goes, oh, I feel small. I feel like I'm
Mhm.
the only one. What would you say to that boy to empower them? What's the word you would give that boy?
I don't even know. Maybe that they're unique, or I don't know. See, I feel like it's more complicated than that.
What?
I'll
What?
tell you why. I'll tell
Come
you
on,
why. I'll
come on,
use
come
my
on.
course as an example.
Right.
Right. I'm and you know what's weird is that like when I applied to go to uni and I did English, I wasn't thinking like this. I didn't feel like that, but it's this. I feel like maybe it's because of what I'm studying and how we're being pushed to look at our own lived experience and our own feelings about stuff. And I keep feeling like like if you go to speak and then someone interrupts, like I would find myself saying, "Oh, sorry, no, like you go on," and I've started to be like, why do I do that? But then I'll notice there's one guy in my class who's white, and he takes up so much space. He's very comfortable taking up space, it seems, right? And I'm also listening to when people get their grades feedback, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I passed. Like, I'm so happy that I passed. I didn't even think I'd be on a course studying at this level. I'm just happy with the pass, right? But them getting around the same grades as me, maybe, well, I was hoping for a distinction. You know, I'm like, they're really kind of like indignant about like what they got. They're not proud of it. They're just like, no, I deserve more than this. It's such a different attitude. And the more I've got to know them and listening to their backgrounds, a lot of private educated people, very middle class, very different lifestyles. And there's only 5 people who aren't white in my class. 4 or 5 actually who aren't white. 3 are black. And I'm like comparing what I'm hearing on both sides. And I feel like there's such a different, it's so different what we're bringing in. When you walk into, I feel like especially in this field, like I've noticed that everyone I'm looking at, even in the literature, I don't see myself anywhere. So for me, it's kind of like I feel very invisible. And on top of that, I'm a trans person. So I just feel completely invisible. Do you know what I mean? I don't know how else to explain it, but there's a sense of entitlement that they seem to have that just isn't there.
You mentioned examining it and realized that they had a class privilege. Coming from somewhere where predominantly black people, there is a difference in class. You had people live in Ironshore, which was more upper class, people with jobs. And then you had different places, even in like Coral Gardens was more middle class. And then you had a place like Saw Spring, which was like, zinc fence territory. And you're having a mixture of class of people, and they all gonna have different attitudes. This is one of the drawback with I assume one of the drawback. I think not having enough positive black spaces in a way is making us feel like this is about race. I'm not saying it's not, but there are certain aspects of it which comes down and boils down to access and class. Now, if you have a system that is built predominantly by white people, they are going to favor their own kind. Just as if you have an establishment and I challenge anybody. You have a black establishment, you're a black person, you start up a company and another black person walks through that door, you are gonna feel a way.
Yeah.
You're gonna be, oh my day, what, go on, or that would be me. I'll be like, what, go on. You're alright, oh my days, like, geez, yeah. I'm gonna have a different dialogue with you. Now, if you come from a certain class, now I'm interviewing for a position, and I've said on my application that I want certain people with certain experiences. Everybody coming through that door ultimately is going to have those kind of experiences. But I'm going to... They have bias training, of course, nowadays, which is very good, I believe. So I'm going to be able to filter out where is my biases. Am I being biased because this person is also black? They look like me. Now, with England being built on a lot of white system, a lot of white people, the bias training is there to say, hold on, people, the England is not, it's not 100% white. So when we go into your workplace, it cannot reflect 100% white. This is where the bias training are coming in. So all other people are doing, they're crying out and be like, hold on, Mr. White Man. You took all of us, you used our labor, you took our blood, and you built up this country. But as soon as I say I need a job now, you don't want to give me a job. Come on, Mr. White Man, what are you doing? So this is where we're having a lot of tension, I think. But the reality is that we haven't accessed it. When I started to go in to study mental health, counseling, what I've realized was that the problem why there's not a lot of black people within counseling per se, that I know of anyway, was access. You have to pay money to study these bloody subjects. After I
Yeah.
finish my level 2, level 3, and then go on to level 4, at some point I need to pay to have my own therapy done while studying.
Yeah.
Where the backside must I get that money if I'm coming from a place of
this is the this
poverty?
is the thing. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
unfortunately, in England, the wealth, or most of what we see here, was built on the back of black people or non-Caucasian people mainly,
Mm.
right? But the people who had the whips were white people.
Mm.
So at the end of the day, the system is built for them, and there's a bias for them, and there's a lot of training of trying to undo that bias
Yeah.
because we're coming into a more civilized world. So
Hopefully.
a lot of that self-doubt that we have when we're in class and we're like, why am I saying sorry? When I'm here, I'm like, yo, that's British. That's a British trait right there. That to me ain't a race trait. That's a British
Yeah.
trait because they're so polite. This is why I enjoyed transitioning in Britain, because even before my top surgery, they would see my chest, but they would never dare say nothing. But if I was in Jamaica, I want that pint, I want that man, I want that. They're fast. They would ask you, they'll tell you.
Yeah. It's
But
a totally different culture.
it's a totally different culture.
Yeah.
But I understand where it's easy to go, it's race, it's race, it's race. But then again, this is why the other day I was saying, I feel like it's all these different pockets of conversations, they're quite separate. So i.e., you've been stopped by the police and how you were viewed, that's racial. Probably, more than likely. Very racial, right? Then you go down to your barber, you talk to your barber. That's not racial anymore, is it? That's now more, what is that? That's homophobia, transphobia. What is that? Where did that come from? Where did we learn that from? We learned that from the people essentially we were enslaved by, right? So it's not, we can't ignore, it's not like we can ignore all of that. But I guess now the question is, where do we go from here, and how are we navigating our own mental health and our own mental state in order to move forward?
Well, I think that's what's really difficult. But I don't know. I'm still thinking of the counselling as well, because my experience of like training as a black trans guy trained to be a counsellor is that there's so much baggage. I think obviously everyone has their baggage, but I feel like I have to bring all of this in with me. You know, those things play out. If like I feel like internalized racism is a real problem, and you can hear it. I'm still thinking, like particularly like my grandparents' generation, and the way they might talk about very openly about how, you know, white people are being better than us, and it's just like as if it's fact. If you're putting yourself down like that, then what do you expect, you know, your children and your children's children to think of themselves? If you're kind of learning to hate yourself from people who look like you, if you bring that mentality into the context of like higher education, then how do you expect that person to feel like they're good enough to be there? They won't have. That's why I was talking about that sense of entitlement. That I'm witnessing from others and thinking, well, this has just never crossed my mind.
Did you grow up hearing your grandparents and your family doing a lot of self-hate?
I heard some challenging stuff. Not
Like,
necessarily from my mum. My mum wasn't like that at all, but I've heard from her like how my granddad spoke, for example, as if, I don't know, as if white people are like the epitome of something to aim for, like they're worthy of more respect than you, and just a higher class of people. And like I don't agree with any of that, but that doesn't stop it from being ingrained in me somewhat, and like being a bit of, you know, it doesn't stop a person from internalizing it and it having an impact on the way they perceive everything. So then when I did start to transition and the police are pulling me over and I'm thinking, what have I done? I mean, I remember just pulling up outside my house, parking, and a police car stopped right next to me and was looking from the window. I thought I've only pulled up outside my house. Like, I've not done anything. I've just parked. And what was weird about those times, actually, when I was pulled over and they asked to see my ID and that, it was before I changed my ID, and it was watching how their attitude changed when they saw. They changed completely. They softened so much. The aggression was gone. So I don't know. Maybe it's race and gender. It's this perception of black men. But all of those things are hard to be managing all the time. That's why I don't think it's just like one side has to fix up. I feel like it's both ways, because I feel like I need to confront that internalized stuff, but equally I don't see why I should also manage somebody else's guilt over what their ancestors may or may not have done, or have to school everybody who doesn't want to have that kind of conversation. The defensiveness that you might get, or that I've experienced from white people sometimes trying to have those kind of conversations and say, you know what, this is what I've experienced. And the defensiveness is just, I don't have the energy for that anymore. Like, I feel like that's work that someone else has to do for themselves, because I have enough baggage on my own. So the mental health side of it is quite a tough one. I think especially with everything that's going on now. It's a hard one. It's quite painful stuff.
Do you see yourself ever going into your uni class and being really confident and taking up space?
I hope so. But I think the other side of that, like, apart from race, is also, before I transitioned, I struggled because I had a real issue with cis men.
Right.
I had very little respect for cis men. I can't say that it's changed a hell of a lot.
My name is Romario Wanless, aka MrBlackBranson. In our next episode,
I've seen women closing their legs to make space for a man. What I have to say may be intelligent as well, but equally I don't want to take up too much space, because I'm aware of what it was like navigating society as a woman.
my beautiful friends and I continue our fly on the wall conversation over at mrblackbranson.uk/article 1086. There you can donate funds, see our Amazon wishlist, leave constructive feedback, and access exclusive episodes. Remember, share a story, save a life.